Like and subscribe on the way in the door, people. Today, welcome back to Mondays in the 90s. And today, we're actually good. We're going to actually not talk about the 90s strictly. We're going to tie it into the 90s. But this person we're talking about today is such an icon, spans such an amount of time that we kind of got to talk about everything leading up to the 90s. And to me, we are talking about the greatest pop star that there has ever been and likely will ever be, at least for a very long time. And that is Michael Jackson. And I'm sure, you know, I do the series in the 90s. Like I said, I do this series so that, people in my age range, my generation, can reminisce about the 90s. And for the younger generation, so y'all can get a glimpse into what made the 90s so fantastic. But yeah, so Michael Jackson started off with the Jackson 5. The Jackson 5, a group that was started in the 60s, actually. And was Michael Jackson and his brothers. His brothers, Jackie, Tito, Jermaine, Marlon, and, of course, the star, Michael Jackson. I would say most Jackson fans have probably at least heard a lot of the early stuff with the Jackson 5. I mean, Rockin' Robin, I'll Be There, Never Can Say Goodbye, ABC. You know, the Jackson 5 had a lot of great hits. And again, like I said, Michael, the youngest of the boys, and was definitely what made that group what it was. Just a child prodigy from an early age. And I don't know, if we got any people who were really into music out there. But if you happen to get your hands on some of Michael's a cappella vocals from back then, I mean, it's pretty incredible. To think that he was so young back then and singing some of these songs with so much emotion. Like I said, Never Can Say Goodbye. I mean, yeah, I mean, he was able to put the emotion of a grown person into these songs. But, as they got older, as Michael got older, like any successful group, most times the members, somebody's going to want to see how they can do on their own, or have ambitions that's bigger than the band, or have creative ideas that's different from the band, want to go in a different direction. And that's what Michael Jackson did. And so to be honest, I would say for a lot of people, Michael's most iconic albums were actually in the 80s. He had iconic albums in the 90s as well. But I would have to say that kind of the 80s was really the decade that put Michael Jackson just on a whole nother level of fame. I would say probably one of his first big album as a solo artist was probably the Off the Wall album, which came out in 79. So right at the end of the 70s. And the Off the Wall album, that had songs like, that had, I would say one of his most iconic songs, Rock With You, was on that album. Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, I Can't Help It, and a lot of great songs on that album. The song Girlfriend that featured Paul McCartney. And then as we step into the 80s, I would say the album that just put Michael Jackson in another stratosphere was the Thriller album. And what was such an iconic thing about this particular album was the music video that was actually more like a mini movie that that came out as well. The mini movie of Thriller is an iconic thing. Matter of fact, if some of you young kids, if y'all haven't seen that, I would highly suggest you go watching it. Now you're gonna be watching something that's a little older, so you know the effects aren't as good and it may look a little cheesy, but back then it was epic. In the dance moves, you know, I've seen a lot of people on YouTube try to recreate those the choreography from Thriller, but the album Thriller was just like I said, a huge album. It had Beat It on there, and that just sent Michael Jackson, Billie Jean. That's something, another huge Michael Jackson song. But yeah, to me that album, that's what really set Michael off into, you know, I would say into rock star status. And then in 1987, the Bad album comes out. And if for those of you who are alive around that time, if you remember, the thing around that time when the Bad album came out is that he also had the movie Moonwalker out, which I used to love that movie because it had a lot of the music from Bad was in that. And again, Moonwalker was like another epic movie length. It was almost like a movie music video, I guess is kind of how I would describe it. Because a lot of it, you know, like I said, it had the music from the albums in there, but it was a lot of choreography, and it was, like I said, it's really more like a music video movie type thing. But anyway, Bad, by the time Bad came out, Michael Jackson was a pop star that you young kids couldn't probably even fathom. I mean, when you think about people like Beyonce and I don't know some of these other people that is out today, Beyonce and who else? Cardi B, and I think it's probably some international artists who are even bigger than Beyonce and some of those people. But anyway, whoever it is that you think today is a big pop star, believe me when I tell you that they do not come close to touching what Michael Jackson was by this time, by the late 80s. Michael Jackson was on a level that, like I said, that I don't think any other star is ever gonna see that. And what I mean by that is, and like I said, if you in this generation, you remember these things, is that when you would see videos of Michael Jackson concerts, like there would be literally people passing out at the sight of him. Passing out just at the sight of him. And I'm not talking about one or two here. It's like it's like scores of people passing out at the sight of him. Like ambulances on deck, because this is like every Michael Jackson concert. Like people could just not stand the sight of him. Like just the sight of him made, you know, made the girls go lose their minds. But even guys, you know, you would see videos of girls and guys passing out at the sight of this guy. And so yeah, it's like I said, that's a amount of stardom like I don't think the world's ever seen, and I don't think you young kids could even fathom the amount of fame that Michael Jackson had back then. It was just really unreal. But then so we move into the 90s. And in the 90s, that's when his album Dangerous comes out. And the album Scream comes out that he does with his sister Janet Jackson. And again, I don't think either one of those albums were as big as the albums he did in the 80s. However, by that time, Michael Jackson was such a huge, unbelievable iconic figure. And then what we have in 1992, I believe, Michael Jackson teams up with Michael Jordan. Michael Jackson, the biggest pop star the world has ever seen, teams up with Michael Jordan, the biggest basketball star the world has ever seen, to do the music video Jam. And it was epic. And again, it was kind of like I said, it was like the two icons of a magnitude that we've never seen before or since in both music and sports coming together. And you got Michael Jordan on there, you know, trying to dance. It was kind of fun video. But yeah, so by that time, again, this is kind of what made the 90s so fantastic. It is that we just had these crazy amount of icons who influenced the culture. But again, like I said, if I had to give one person who influenced the 90s the most, I would have to say that would have to be Michael Jordan. Even more so than Michael Jackson, because by that time, Michael Jackson was just like a mainstay in the culture. Like I said, to me, Michael Jackson's biggest time was really in the 80s when the Thriller video came out and when the Thriller album came out. And like I said, and then when Bad came out and Moonwalker, like that's when Michael was just like I said, people were passing out at the sight of this guy. He's like a entertainer that you young kids cannot fathom. You cannot fathom the level of entertainer that Michael Jackson was. But like I said, if I had to give the 90s, if I had to nominate one person who I thought had the biggest influence on the 90s, I would have to give that to Michael Jordan. Again, because like I said, that's when everybody's hooping. Everybody's wearing jerseys. Like wearing basketball jerseys, again, for you young kids was part of the culture. And basketball was just included in TV shows and in movies, all the iconic basketball movies. So like I said, in the 90s, we just had so many iconic figures from Michael Jackson, Michael Jordan, Mike Tyson, Tupac, Biggie Smalls. It was just full of these larger-than-life figures that were all intertwined in a way to make the 90s a beautiful time to be alive. And yeah, you know, I think I'm going to keep this video. Well, we probably going to hold up on this video here. But, you know, if anybody is interested in hearing more about the Michael Jackson stuff, I might do another video just going more in depth about Michael Jackson because, you know, for people who were around that time, especially, you know, back in the 80s, you know that there was like a unsung rivalry between Michael Jackson and Prince, and just a lot of little side stories that I could tell about the whole Michael Jackson thing, you know, from I'm sure you all remember when Michael Jackson's hair caught on fire. I think it was maybe was it a Pepsi commercial or was it doing a performance, but his hair literally caught on fire. There's so many little side stories about Michael, and then not even getting into the whole, you know, branching out into talking about his family, Janet, who had a great career on her own. You know, she started off as Penny on the show Good Times, and then eventually evolved into a music entertainer herself, which Janet was a force herself. I would say more so in the 90s. So I actually may have to do a video on Janet. But yeah, so, you know, if anybody's interested on kind of a little more in-depth video on Michael, let me know in the comments. But anyway, that's all we got for today. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. If there's anything else that you have to add about Michael Jackson in the 90s, but really Michael Jackson in general. Because like I said, I think Michael more so hit his stride in the 80s. By the 90s, he was just like a fixture of pop culture. But anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments. You all have a fantastic day, and I will see you next time. All right.